Welcome back to Wisdom Wednesday, and I've got some really good feedback from my last presentations of what first-time homebuyers wish they had asked. There was the 4-part series, so I decided to do another one, and here we go. This is kind of similar, but it's just questions you might want to ask when you're thinking about buying a home. Okay, as you guys know, I'm Coach Clarence with Geneva Financial. I thank you for tuning in for today's session on the top 20 questions you need to ask before buying a home. Okay, I've had the distinct pleasure of helping several first-time home buyers make their dream of buying their first home come true. So I've got a little experience and know some pros and cons of what happened. Some people think the first step to exploring a home is talking with their lender about their financial options. And yes, that is important, but I've found that many people thinking about home ownership versus renting have a lot of things to think about, though, before they embark on this adventure. So this first segment will be very conversational, just to give you some gems to consider before you buy. There's a lot of things to consider, and I'm going to try to get into a few. We're not going to go super far into the ocean here, but just enough to give you some knowledge. So how do you begin the homeowner buying process? The most important thing you can do is to get yourself organized, get a solid education about the process of buying a home. That's where I come in. After all, this is going to be a big investment for you. You're going to be in this home for at least a minimum of 3 to 5 years. So you want to make sure you get the right scenario so you're not sitting in a bad scenario with a lot of regrets, which a lot of people have when they buy their first home. Okay, so let's start reviewing what you should be thinking about before you decide to go shopping for a new home or anything of that nature. By now, some of you are likely aware of the benefits and also the pitfalls of renting. One of the advantages of renting is that you could just leave when you're done, when your lease is up, or you might be asked to leave if some situation goes bad. But the opposite is true, that you may need to leave before you're ready to do so. While there is some freedom and no commitment, most people find that security is important to them, especially when it comes to the place you sleep each night. All right, so let's look at a few disadvantages of renting, which there are some, and you should know what they are. Okay, when you rent, you're really building your landlord's equity, not your own. Owning real estate is consistently quoted as being the #1 way Americans build their wealth. Each payment you make to your home pays down what you owe as the value of your home goes up. So it's very cool versus when you're just paying rent, you're not helping your bottom line at all. Okay, renting does not give you tax benefits of owning a home. Well, you should always consult with a tax consultant. I'm not a tax consultant. I'm not a tax person. But there are certain benefits that you can take advantage of, such as deductions for your property taxes and your loan interest. Excuse me. Okay, so when you rent, you're never quite sure if the rent's gonna go up each year. Some of you guys get those notices, the rent's up, the rent's going up. And increasing your rent payment can devastate your budget and force you to move somewhere else that is more within your budget. So that's something you wanna be considerate of. At least you know what your mortgage payment is gonna be generally every year. Obviously, certain things cause that to go up, like taxes and homeowners insurance, but for the most part, it's pretty solid. Okay, and let's face it, you cannot conduct your dream do-it-yourself projects on an apartment or a home that you're renting. So you can't have certain pets. There's all kinds of hassles, and you might need deposits. So that's another disadvantage. Okay, even though all that really sounds cool, there are some things you need to think about to make sure home ownership is right for you and your lifestyle. So some things I'm thinking about in this scenario is things that you might want to ponder, like, do you have a source of income that is reliable? It is very important that your income is reliable and predictable. Do you have ideas about where you like to live? Obviously, homeownership, where you qualify, where you find a home, is going to put you in a certain area. Also, another consideration is whether or not you want to live in that area for a reasonable period of time. If it's an area that's growing, you think there are great schools, a lot of things to think about there. Also, have you demonstrated the ability to pay your monthly obligations on time? Now, I don't want you to obsess over this, but demonstrating this can make it very important for us lenders to see that you can make your payments on time. We're looking at that real hard. We can't see inconsistencies in your rent payment. We need to make sure that you're paying it all the time. Okay, so that's one of the things you need to think about when you think about how have I been paying my bills. You can always talk to me about credit, stuff like that, any concerns you might have. A lot of times there's simple fixes and people just don't know, so they avoid doing stuff. Okay, the next point you need to ponder is whether or not you are ready to maintain this home. When you own a home and something breaks, you either need to fix it, get a guy to come over, the handyman, or you got to do it yourself. When you're renting, you just say, hey, my pipes are busted, or this isn't working, and the landlord comes over and takes care of it. So just some advantages of renting versus owning. Now, remember, home ownership is a commitment. You can't just get up and leave. You can't get, I'm tired. Because for you got to sell your house, or you have to hope somebody wants to buy it and you can move on to something different, okay? But so I think obviously home ownership has so many more benefits that make you want to buy a home, but you need to know how and why before you just walk into a scenario. One of your first priorities should be to have a must-have list or a wish list that you would love to have in your home. And while this may work for a few people, it's likely you'll have to come up with a list that you really need and what you want to have in your house. For example, some people want a big pool. Some people want a lot of garage space. There are a lot of things you got to think about. How many rooms you want, these things you got to think about before you get out on the market. And once you've established that, start thinking about location. Next, consider how big or small you want the bedrooms, the bathrooms, the living spaces. What's important to you? Do you like to entertain? I like to entertain. Do you want a big backyard so you can have your friends over? Do you want a setup where you can throw in a nice grill and do some of these things? Those are things that you should be thinking about. Some people want 3 garages. There are all kinds of things that you can think about. And that's an advantage of home ownership, obviously, too. Finally, I want you to look at the amenities that you must have on your wish list. There are things like fireplaces, game rooms, lot size. A lot of that can play an important part in your decision in your daily life. For example, some people thinking a big backyard is great until you consider the maintenance to keep it up. Do you have grass? Is it a desert landscape? All these things you have to think about when you are buying a home. So different than just renting an apartment or a house that's already set and you just walk and go, this is what I got, and then they're dealing with it, okay? Also, you must have a wish list for deserving, just for thinking about what you want before you start looking at home. That's the key points I wanted this first conversation about. Be thinking about all these things before you decide to buy a home. That must wish list, that must things I have. Where do I want to live? Do I pay my bills on time? All these things are important considerations when buying your home. So this first week, that's what I want you to think about. Tune in next Wednesday where we're going to get a little more into it. Some great home buying tips. This is Wisdom Wednesday. I'm Coach Clarence. And remember, results starts when you do.